Hi everyone, I'm going to go through paper 3 of June 2018, multiple choice part. Here's the past paper, 2018, paper 3. Time allowed 2 hours. You want to spend about half an hour on section A, which is what we're going to tackle today. I'm going to go through each question, explaining briefly the answer. And you can download all of that afterwards. You'll see that in the link below. So please click that link and also please subscribe. Thanks. First one, which of the following applies to merit goods? So merit goods are goods that have positive consumption externalities. They are not public goods. That would apply more to public goods. The marginal private benefit is greater than marginal social cost. That's not correct. Because there's a positive externality, the marginal external benefit, this is a positive number. To get the social benefit, you have to add up the private benefit and the external benefit. And since this is a positive number, so imagine this is 5, for example, this is going to cause your social benefit to be higher than your private benefit. So that's wrong. It's quite an odd response, but this is the only one left. Yes, merit goods will be provided, just not in enough quantity, but they will be provided. There are still possibilities of making profits in this market because there is some demand for the market. Some people do want to buy merit goods, just not enough for it to be socially optimum. Okay, question 2, we're going to work out what percentage national debt has increased by. So here I see that the government had to borrow 40 billion. If you're borrowing, you're adding 40 billion to the national debt. And the national debt originally was 1,000 billion. So to work out the percentage change in national debt, we need to take the new national debt minus the old one. This is all in billions, and you want to divide it by the old one. Be sure to times this by 100, and you should be left with 4%. That's it. Here we have a PPF. So Y is on the PPF. What is the PPF? We know that we're using all resources to the full abilities that they have. And resources, I mean everything. So land, labor, capital, and enterprise. So we know that's happening at Y. Everywhere on that PPF does have that. X is inside it, so it's not using all resources or to their full abilities. Let's take a look at the question. So A, it's both productively and allocatively efficient. Watch out for the question. It says that it will be. Well, why will it have to be productive and allocative efficiency? That's not true. There is, everywhere along here is productively efficient. Somewhere on here is allocatively efficient, but we don't know where it is. It could be there. It could be there. We have no information from the text to tell us that it has to be at Y. So we can't conclude A. B sounds really tempting. B might be, at first glance the answer because you're getting more production of X getting to Y. You're consuming more consumer goods. You've produced more consumer goods. You've consumed more capital goods. And the scale of production has really increased from Y. But that doesn't guarantee economies of scale. Remember, you could have diseconomies of scale. So I don't know that there will be economies of scale. So I will say that's wrong. Trend rates of growth, no, that would be a shift out of your PPF, which you don't have here. And so the answer is D. There is zero opportunity cost because when you go from X to Y, you're producing more consumer goods, more capital goods. There's no sacrifice of those in that movement. So there's zero opportunity cost. So if you remember, opportunity cost is what you sacrifice. So there's no sacrifice made here. Here there's been an increase in investment. Labor productivity should increase. If you have more capital and more machinery, it's like a tool. It's like using a phone. You get more productive. So labor productivity should increase, not decline. That's wrong. The labor force size is determined by other stuff. The labor force size is determined by your willingness to work, your ability to work, and also things like population size. The investment is not really affecting any of these, at least not in the negative direction, so that's wrong. Negative demand side shock would mean a fall in consumption, investment, government spending, or X, or an increase in M. That's really unlikely because here we have an increase in investment, so that's wrong. So we're left with D as the answer, supply side improvement. Why is there a supply side improvement? We've got more capital per person. So they're all using their tools, they're getting more productive. So the productive potential of the economy increases, which we could illustrate this as a shift of the long run AS to the right. Here we're asked, what is the total amount of money received by the producers, from the consumers, and the government? To work out the money received from consumers, we need to work out the price of the goods at which is sold times the units that they bought. So here we have a subsidy causing the shift from S1 to S2. So we're moving from an equilibrium N to the equilibrium M. So the price of the good is now G, and the units bought is E2. So the amount consumers spend is G times E2, which in other words should be all of this area here. To calculate the government spending, remember that they've given the firm the subsidy. And the subsidy is what shifted the supply curve, making each unit cheaper to produce. So in other words, you can find out what the subsidy is by just looking at the vertical distance. It could be any vertical distance that they've given you. Here is the one that is being labeled. So the subsidy is the distance between K and M. And we need to multiply this over how many units have been subsidized, which is the units sold, which is E2. So we get a box of height km and a distance going all the way to E2. We get a rectangle like this. So the government subsidy expenditure should be all of that. And so what we are looking for is an option where we've got O, J, K, E2, which is D. This is micro. Governments intervene in micro to solve market failure. So we're looking for something that's in a market failure topic. So things like externalities, we're looking for public goods. We are looking for monopoly power, anything like that that's in your market failure kind of topic. So let's start with A. Firms in an oligopolistic market may limit price competition. Yes. So we have two models suggesting that they might do that. We've got the kink demand curve, and we've also got a collusion theory, which is the prisoner's dilemma. Is that harmful though? Is that a market failure? Definitely it is if you're colluding. If you're colluding, you're at first breaking the law, but you're also raising prices, and that's harming consumers a lot. So you get a really big reduction in consumer welfare to gain a little bit of producer welfare. And overall, you end up harming society. So I think A is the answer. There's definitely a market failure here. B is wrong. Regulations are not the only form of intervention. There are other things like taxes and subsidies that could work but are not regulations. C is false. They can only earn normal profits because they have no barriers to entry. Public goods are non-excludable and non-rival, so that they were just trying to throw you off with that one. So here we have a question about quantitative easing. Quantitative easing just means creating new money, the central bank creating new money. And that money is then used to buy something called bonds. So in other words, it's demanding bonds. So I'm looking really for bond prices to increase. That's the first thing I'm going to look at. So bond prices should increase. So I'm going to eliminate A and B already. Because this buying of bonds can be of banks, it means banks have more cash because they've received cash in exchange for their bonds. Because they have more cash, they can supply more mortgages and things, which is going to shift the supply curve for mortgages and any loan products to the right, in turn making them cheaper. So I'm looking for a fall in long-term interest rates, rise in bond prices, such as confirming that. Bank liquidity, you are creating more money, and that money is being given to banks in exchange for their bonds. So in turn, bank liquidity should increase. Liquidity means how much cash, how much near cash substitutes they kind of have available to use kind of in emergency situations. So the answer is D. Okay, cross elasticity is a favorite. There's the XED thing. You always put quantity in the top. Quantity demanded, they're asking for good X. They'll usually tell you this. Percentage change in the price of good Y. And here they're being really nice. They actually tell us kind of a lot of the values. So we need to work out the percentage change in the quantity of Y. And so we do the new quantity minus the old quantity divided by the old quantity, and then times this by 100. So we are told the quantity goes from 3 to 5 million times this by 100. This is 2/3 times 100, so this is 66 point something %. Let's repeat for the price of Y. So I need the new price minus the old price divided by the old price, times that by 100. And if I do this, I will get 1 minus 75 pence divided by 75 pence times by 100. And you will get 1/3, so this will equal 33.3%. And so then you put it back into your XED equation, 66 point something % divided by 33, you get 2. It's a positive 2. All of these, both of these have increased. That's the answer, C. Here we have the Phillips curve, unemployment and inflation trade-offs. So let's go through each of them. There is high inflation leading to high unemployment. Okay, let's check that out. So when there's high inflation, we actually have low unemployment. That's wrong. So that's wrong too. Inversely proportional. What does that mean? That means if inflation were to go up, unemployment will go down. So I'm going to check, is that what we see? If inflation goes up, we move from A to B, and unemployment goes down. So at first glance, that seems to be good until you look at this other word here, inversely proportional. When there's the word proportional, it means it's a linear thing. So that would actually only be true if you had a curve like that, kind of like a straight line, like a demand curve. So they're being really, really picky with that one, but that is wrong. You don't have a straight relationship. You've got kind of this curvy relationship. It can't be proportional. What about C? So at C, we are reducing inflation from 7 to 3%. We're moving from A to B. Unemployment has increased from 3 to 4. This is an increase of 1%. In terms of like a percentage change, you would do the new one minus the old one divided by the old one times by 100. This would just be a 33% increase if you wanted to measure the relative change. So whichever way you work it out, this is just wrong. So trader for reducing unemployment from 7, we're going from A to 4, we're going from A to B, is 3% inflation. Yes, you went from 0 to 3, so you've gained this 3% inflation. That's the answer. Okay, behavioral economics, we learn things like biases, we learn things like nudges, we learn things like framing. And the point of that is to build a more accurate model of how economic decision makers actually make decisions. So we learn that they don't actually really usually make rational decisions, or if they do, it takes them quite a lot of effort. There's quite a few mental biases involved to achieve a rational decision. So they are definitely going to disagree that everything is rational. They're explicitly lots of information explaining why they might not make rational decisions. So you've got examples like anchoring and any other kind of biases that might be involved in making an individual not rational. You've got bounded rationality, bounded self-control. For the same reason, I think B sounds good. Might be biased. You've got that those ways of seeing situations that are not accurate. C, price changes cannot explain how competitive markets achieve equilibrium. Okay, I think there is some truth in this, that behavioral economics is going to suggest that because people aren't that rational, simply looking at the price, where the individual would compare their price to kind of their utility, isn't going to be an accurate, really truthful model. But there's less focus on explaining those price changes. It would be kind of odd to have an explanatory model because people are quite irrational. So we can't really model how price changes or what really would help achieve an equilibrium. We don't really, we can't really predict things too accurately if people are irrational. So I think C is kind of tempting, but it's not as good as B. This one is a classic economic theory. So what I mean by that is economic theory, like from the beginning, before behavioral economics was on the scene. Right, here we are asked what's going to happen to price and quantity of chickens. So I'm told here that they have an income elasticity of 1.5. So remember, income elasticity is your percentage change in quantity demanded divided by your percentage change in income. So if this is 1.5, I know if income increases, I know that the quantity demanded will increase. And because we know that the firm is able to expand their supply, then we know that the quantity will increase. So we're looking out for something like this and not these ones. Also, if you have demanded more because your income has increased, you will cause the price to increase. So we are looking for the only ones that match up with a higher price, which will be B. So what caused this fall in output? Output has fallen from Y1 to Y2, and that's been driven by AD. So we need to write down the equation for AD. Got this C plus this I plus G plus X minus M. For this to fall, we need consumption to fall, investment to fall, government spending to fall, X to fall, or M to increase. Any of these would work. An increase in budget deficit means increase in G. It's a decrease in taxes, but because of that increase in government spending that's higher, that should actually boost AD, so that's wrong. Increase in interest rates is going to make consumption more expensive, investing more expensive if you've got to buy loans. So that's possible. That could decrease consumption and decrease investment. I'm just going to check the other ones, but I like the sound of that one. Size of the labor force, that is maybe going to mean that more people are working. So it could increase consumption. It's not such a clear link to AD. It's more going to link to the long run AS. So that's definitely the wrong direction if it's going to increase consumption. Increase in the volume of exports. So if you have a higher quantity of exports, you're probably selling them for a cheaper price. If it's elastic, I'm going to assume these exports, the value of them will increase. So that's probably the wrong way around. So the answer is B. This one is a good fun. We have the circular flow model where it's an equilibrium. So we need the injection to equal kind of the leakages. So I don't know if you've seen this one before. All your injections are your investment, your exports and your government spending, and your leakages are savings and imports and taxation. So if it's an equilibrium, these sides will equal each other. And that's what we're told. So to get government spending and taxation, I need to rearrange this equation, I'm guessing. So let's keep doing it one by one, minus I minus X. And then I'm just going to make this an easier way to look at this. Right, so for government spending to equal taxation, for these things to equal, it better be true that S plus I minus X minus I is 0. So I'm going to plug in some of these numbers that we're told here. So we're told that savings is 200. We're told that imports is 400. Imports should be a yeah, 400, and investment is 200, and exports is 300. This gives me a total of how much? What's that? 600 minus 600. No, minus 500. So you can see that that does not balance if I've done that okay. So that's wrong. The budget surplus equals balance of payments deficit. To have a budget surplus, okay, this one's fun. We're going to need government spending to be greater than taxation. So whoops, budget surplus is the other way around before I made that mistake. Government spending is less than taxation. But right now we've got all of these other terms here. So that's 200 plus 400, 600 minus 400. This is 100 plus, I think, if I've done this right. So that should mean government spending is actually greater than taxation because we're adding on 100. So that itself doesn't make sense. So B itself won't make sense. Government has a budget deficit. It should, yeah, because government spending is greater than taxation by 100, as we've seen here. Budget surplus, no, we just worked out it doesn't. So C is the answer. Oh, okay, diminishing returns, like this one. Diminishing returns, we need to work out the marginal product. We're going to make a column here, marginal product. And to work this out, we're going to look at the change in total production. So we would do 260 minus 128, and work this out, and you should get 32. So as we go from this line to this line, the change in the total production divided by the change in your labor, your workers, is 32 divided by just 1. So the marginal product is 32. So we go on to the next line. The next line we go from 260 to 420. That is, I think, a 160 change in total products divided by 1. We go from 5 to 6 workers. So this is 160. And the next line, we increase total product by 77 divided by 1 extra worker, giving 77. And oh, I've got the answer already. To get diminishing marginal returns, you need your marginal product to start to fall. And it does fall from 160 to 77. It starts to fall when we have added that 7th worker. That's when I calculated the 77. So in other words, C is the answer. Here we have a tariff diagram, lots of fun. This is a good one. And we are imposing a tariff. So we're going from there to there. By the way, for those that you don't know, the tariff itself is the gap between that. We need to work out the tariff revenue. So tariff revenue is going to be all the imports that get taxed. We're going to generate all that tax money. So we're going to multiply the import quantity, and we're going to multiply that by the tariff charged on each one. So I've just told you that the tariff charged on each one, that's the T. That's the distance between ST and SW. And the import quantity, we need to work that out. So at PT, I'm going to change the color. At PT, if we kind of go across, we're going to find that much is supplied in this economy. So let me write that down. The quantity supplied at PT is Q2. We can repeat the same thing, go across, see where if it hits the demand curve. That is the quantity demanded at PT. Is Q3. In other words, you've got more demand than supply. So we're gonna buy as much as we can from the economy locally. We're gonna buy all the supply locally. And then we can't really satisfy the demands, but luckily we've got the world, and the world can help us out. So we will import the rest from the world. So the import quantity will be all this excess demand that we've had to meet from overseas. So the import quantity is Q3 minus Q2. What I mean by that minus, I'm just trying to explain that it's this distance between there and there, that red bit. So in other words, we've got a box, we've got Q2 and Q3. We've gone up by T. So on this graph, if you multiply these together in this equation, you're going to get the area of a rectangle. And that rectangle is going to be that area there. So I'm looking for a JFGK, which is that one. That's the answer. A person eats 6 biscuits to maximize their utility. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with that, but fine. Price of biscuits increases by 50%. Aha. So if biscuits increase by 50%, the price of biscuits, people are going to eat fewer biscuits. Okay, so maybe it's easier to draw this to see kind of what's happening. So let's say that this person would consuming 1 biscuit, 2 biscuits, 3, 4, 5. It went up to 6. Let me just kind of illustrate what would happen to their utility. They'd have 0 utility when they don't eat any biscuits. Maybe the first biscuit added 10. Usually the more you eat, the less kind of extra satisfied you get. You were really probably quite hungry in the beginning, maybe had a craving for biscuits, and now kind of that's better satisfied. So maybe kind of that goes down. So what should this be? 20. The person was still eating biscuits at 6. So actually I'm going to assume that this is still kind of increasing quite nicely. First it increases by 8, then by 6. So each biscuit has added less and less to utility. If you look here, usually what we assume the marginal utility, this one added 10. This one added 9. This one added, if I'm not maths, 8, 7, 6, and 5. So we usually see something like this. When you consume more biscuits, you get like kind of less satisfied. So if the price of biscuits increase, you're going to consume fewer biscuits. I don't know, imagine you're going to consume 3 biscuits and not 6. So you can't access 45 utility anymore. You can only really access 27 from the biscuits itself. So their utility, their total utility should decrease. So I'm between A or C. And the marginal utility, remember it decreases as you consume more. So since they've consumed fewer biscuits, they are going to face slightly more marginal utility. So that should be that one. So that's the answer, C. Make sure to write that down. Okay, systemic crisis. So this is kind of talking about something similar to the financial crisis. So usually if house prices fall and there is, and say some people don't pay back their mortgage, the house goes back to the bank, they take ownership of it. But because house prices have fallen, sometimes the bank gets back less money when they sell the house compared to what they lent out. So for example, say in 2015, they lent somebody 200,000 and in 2020, they fail to, 2020, they fail to pay their mortgage. So the bank then grabs the house back, but they sell the house prices have fallen, maybe they've fallen to 150,000. So the bank is only able to recover 150,000, but they have lent out 200,000. So the bank starts making a loss. And this could be really bad because that loss means the bank is making a loss. The bank will find it more difficult to pay off any debts that they had acquired themselves. So it could easily start kind of infecting other banks. And this is what we mean by systemic crisis, where this kind of crisis that just happened kind of in one bank starts spreading to other banks and other parts of the financial system. So that's kind of the process with how this might spread. So we're going to look at what would make this more likely to happen. A is the answer. What this means, low ratio of capital, it means that the bank has got quite a small amount of money or close to money things that it's got saved up for like emergency purposes. If houses were to fall in price and the bank was to make some losses, and say the bank had to pay some loans, it's going to find it really difficult to pay those loans if it doesn't have much money available saved up anyway. So that's why it's likely to then cause trouble to other banks. Maybe bank 1 doesn't pay the money to bank 2 and it keeps spreading like that. So that's quite likely. B, for those that you don't know, that's an organization inside the Bank of England, and its job is to help make things safer. So this is probably quite unlikely. Lending less to high-risk borrowers means less people will stop paying back their mortgage, means this bit is less likely to happen. So B is definitely not the answer. The Bank of England as a lender of last resort. This means in an emergency, if you're in an emergency such as you're making extreme losses, the Bank of England could step in to help you out. That's going to help you survive a little bit more. So the C is really not the right kind of direction there. High proportion of liquid assets. This is another way for saying things like money and close to money things. If they've got lots of money, they can withstand making losses and stuff like that. So all of these other three are in the wrong direction. So these curves have shifted to the right. For the long run AS to shift to the right, I need more factors of production, or they need to be a higher quality, such as with education, such as with technology. For the short run AS to shift to the right, we need a lower average cost of production. So let's go through the options. An increase in renewable energy. This is the factor of production of land. So if you have that more, you're going to increase your factors of production, shifting your long run AS. If you've also got more energy, the supply of energy is going to shift to the right. That's going to cause cheaper energy, P1 to P2. And energy is a raw material that's needed by thousands of companies. So if that becomes cheaper, then we are meeting the requirements here that the short run AS will shift to the right. So A is the answer. So question 19 is asking what can be concluded. Be sure you can only conclude what you have information on. This is showing just the average exchange rate. So from that, we can't actually infer that it has appreciated or devalued or depreciated. We don't know that. We need to know what it would be in 2016 and what it would be in 2020 to know if it's depreciated, but I've just got the average here, so I don't know that. This column seems quite tempting at first glance, but that's just an estimate. That's what somebody else has predicted the value of these currencies should be. It's not actually the price. So that's another reason why we can't know if it's appreciated or devalued or anything. This is an estimate. This isn't actually the price. So we're left with D as the answer. This one is a fun question. Here, watch out for these words: significant. Watch out for the word persistent, economies of scale. This is a company that probably has a downward sloping long run AC. Just kind of keeps falling, kind of like a natural monopoly is expected to have. So let's go through all of these options. I can see already that B is probably wrong. For it to be U-shaped, you need this economies of scale, but because they say the word significant, there's so many economies of scale. Even if you have some diseconomies, it will still get pushed down the long run AC because you've got really significant economies of scale, and it's persistent. So I think they reckon that B is quite unlikely. Increasing profitability, this company will become more profitable probably because they've got lower costs and they sell more output. However, they have an extreme advantage in the market. They're able to be extremely cost competitive compared to these other new companies that are quite tiny. The new companies would be operating like maybe around here. And the existing company would be operating down there. So it's a huge difference in their costs. So they are just not going to be able to get into the market. They won't be able to sell their good at a price competitive price. Total cost of production will increase. No, it says decrease. It says decrease. You can't decrease your costs. If you produce more, you always have to buy more variable resources. So your costs always increase, your total variable costs always increase, meaning your total costs always increase. That is the wrong way around. That's wrong. That's going to increase. Why? So because this company is going to be the only one in the market over time, because they're so much more competitive than any other company, they're going to gain monopoly power. And when they have monopoly power, they can set their own prices. So A is the answer. Make sure you write that one there. Okay, profits are maximized. This is one to learn. MC equals MR. That just tells you the quantity. So the way I do it, I actually highlight these curves. I highlight the MC and I highlight the MR, which would be there. And you can see that these things cross at output G. So I'm looking for, oh, here it is. This is the answer. If you notice it says OG, that confuses a few people sometimes. Imagine G is 100. If you sell 100, it means you've sold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 100. That's what it's trying to show you, that it sold all the way up to G. And that's, I think, the most accurate way to look at this. Okay, to reduce poverty, we're looking for things, it has to be immediately. So we're looking for things like higher incomes, or we're looking for things like cheaper prices, or some kind of support. So A, subsidies on electric cars. What's that going to do? That's going to increase the quantity demanded of electric cars. Maybe that leads to more electric cars companies hiring people, which should reduce poverty, but that's going to take some time. It's not a very direct link. There's a few things that could go wrong with that one possibly, but the main thing is that's going to take time, so that doesn't answer the question. It's not immediate. So A is wrong. If you do more indirect taxes, you're looking at things like increasing VAT. That's going to make the price of everyday goods more expensive, which is the opposite of what you want to reduce poverty. To reduce poverty, you want food to be cheaper, you want clothing to be cheaper, and here it's having kind of that opposite effect. So I'm going to say that's just wrong. A price floor, this is another word for this one, is a minimum price. And I'll draw what a minimum price does. It's usually set above the current price. So the idea is you increase the price from P1 to P2. That won't reduce poverty. You're actually making basic foods more expensive, making people less able to buy basic foods. And because they spend more money on food, they will spend less money on clothing and housing. That's also really important. So C is totally the wrong direction. As a result, we're left with D. Price ceiling is another word for a maximum price. That's just going to be kind of the opposite. You bring the price from P1 down to P3. So that should mean households spend today less money on their energy, making more money available to buy food and buy clothing and buy housing. Okay, the current account deficit. To look at the current account deficit, you want to look at this column here. And you can see that the current account deficit has increased, well, become more negative. The current account deficit used to be 1.6% of GDP, and now it's 5.1. And if you look at this table, all of these things, by the way, are in the current account, all of this and that one and that one. The thing that's causing this total to be more negative is this column here more than any other column, I think. So that's the primary income deteriorating. That's the answer. Okay, contestable means that you can access the market easier. If you reduce tariffs, it's going to make it much easier for foreign goods to suddenly compete in the UK and compete in other countries. That's the definition of contestable. The foreign goods are going to be seen as a little bit cheaper now. They can access better, so that's the answer. Right, in this one, price has increased from P1 to P2. That's been driven by an increase in AD and a shift left of the short run AS. That's not what they're asking us though. They told us because of this increased price, they have increased interest rates. I think they said it changed, but I know the interest rates should increase to decrease prices. It's kind of confusing what they're asking. They've given us a whole bunch of irrelevant information, but they're asking what will be the effects of decreased interest rates. Increased interest rates. So I'm going to go with the easy ones. Loans more affordable. That's not true. If you increase interest rates, you have to pay more in interest. It's going to be totally the opposite. These mean the same thing. If you have higher interest rates, you're going to make it more expensive for even the government to start to borrow. So the cost of servicing, so the cost of interest is going to be a lot higher too. So that's the wrong way around also. Right, if you increase interest rates, the exchange rate will increase. This is the answer. Why? Because with higher interest rates, foreign investors want to join your economy. They want to invest in your economy. They want to put their money in bank accounts to earn all this interest. So in other words, they're going to demand more pounds, as an example. And as a result, that's going to increase the price of the pounds. And that's what it's called with an upward pressure. It's going to appreciate the pound or appreciate the exchange rate. That's the answer. Oh, it's imagine competition in oligopoly. This one's just a definition question. You need to work out this thing called the concentration ratio. And it has to be done for the few large firms that exist. So 3 is a really good number. So that's the answer. Okay, this one was a bit confusing when I first read it. So what we want to do is reduce this gap between the wages. That's what the question is asking. So ways to do that is for the lower earners to either be more in demand or less in supply. That should increase this lower wage. Another way we could reduce this difference is for the higher earners to have less demand or more supply. That will push down their wages, in turn making that gap smaller. So we're looking for something kind of that meets that. So a fall in the demand for unskilled workers, that's going to decrease this bit, which is going to reduce their wages even more, making the differential even worse. So that's not right. Fall in the size of the labor force, that's going to decrease the supply of workers of both of them, which kind of doesn't really improve the wage differential very much. Remains kind of about the same because you're increasing the wages for both categories. So I'm going to say that one's quite unlikely. An increase in demand for skilled workers, that would increase skilled workers' wages even more, pushing that wage higher and making the wage differential even higher. So that's wrong. And so we're left with the last one, which is D. But here's why it works. If you have a degree, you will reduce the supply of the low skilled workers, making their wages higher. And at the same time, you will increase the supply of higher earners. So you're going to reduce their wages. So the gap only starts becoming this much instead of the original that much. So that's the answer. Monopsony. The monopsony graph looks like this. Well, this is your AC and this is your MC, and then you've got the demand curve like that, which is equal to your MRP. This is wages, and this is the quantity of labor employed. So it's asking, why are wages unemployment usually low? A is wrong. A monopsonist is going to set MC equal to MR. They're going to hire this many people, so E1. But they know they can pay people the minimum that they can accept because their workers have very, very few options. So what they do is they don't pay them that much. They pay them the minimum that workers are willing to accept, which is W1. So that's not true. So monopoly supplier of labor, that's not true. Monopsonies are kind of a monopoly buyer of labor. And equates the marginal revenue product with its marginal cost. That's what we did. We did not pick the wage rate. Yeah, that seems about right. This D is wrong because that's describing a monopoly, which is not a monopsonist. Sometimes they coincide, but they're a bit different. This is talking about the labor market. Monopoly is more about the product market. Okay, and then the next one, which of the following is likely to cause an increase in the structural budget deficit? You're looking for things that don't vary with the business cycle. Overspending that doesn't vary with the business cycle. So here A is wrong. It's because of the economic cycle. That's wrong. Recession, again, wrong. Recovery, that's business cycle, wrong. So we're left with C. Okay, so during 6 quarters, economy experienced deflation. Did it? So did the consumer price index ever fall? It always increased, so it never experienced deflation. So disinflation, although, yeah, that's not right. Did it experience a recession? Did real GDP ever fall for a recession? It did between quarter 1 and 3. So that maybe I'm going to test if there's been disinflation in that time period. So if you look here, prices increased by 5%. And then in the next row, don't know what 6 divided by 105 is. I think it's a little bit higher though. I think it's about 5.5%. So the rate of inflation was 5 and now it's 5.5. So actually there is inflation, which is really interesting because you've got a recession but inflation at the same time. So that is wrong. I'm going to use the fact that I know why a recession is. There was rising inflation. That's the answer. We had the 5% increasing to 5.5%. Okay, hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, leave some comments, and please suggest any future videos that you'd like me to do. Thanks, bye.